Welcome back to the main stage of Most Wanted Music 2023. I'm Jonna and your stage host for today. And do you remember the first time we started talking about AI more frequently? It seemed as if the aliens just had landed. Questions arose like, should we even approach it? Should we even use it? Does it have own feelings, own thoughts? And what if it takes over humankind? But now AI became more normal, is almost everywhere and won't go anywhere anytime soon because it makes life easier. But now it's on us to shape a framework where human needs and technology come together. For the next hour, we'll discuss ethical guidelines for music businesses and production together with Jay Ahern from the Association for Electronic Music. You can. Then tech alchemist Koto Murai, artist Birkelou, co-founder of Thunderboom Records Joost de Boe, and DJ and production director Ariel Fischer.
Thanks very much. Oh, that's loud. Okay, just before we start this, how many artists are here? Okay, how many music tech companies? And how many, what I would call traditional music companies, record labels, publishers? Okay, got a couple. Okay, great. I think everyone should have a chance to introduce themselves briefly. My name is Jay Ahern. I'm Chief Growth Officer at the Association for Electronic Music. We're a global trade body representing, I think it's 280 companies. Across 29 countries. Members include anyone from Mobile Records here in Berlin to SoundCloud to Pioneer, Ticketmaster's a member. What glues us together as a community is electronic music. Next up, Koto, please introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Koto Murai. I am a creative director and tech alchemist, putting together different projects from production to live shows and bringing forward products and thinking about technology and how it interfaces with artists. I work closely with artist Grimes and classical pianist Serene, and also CreateSafe, building technologies, and the product ElfTech that we made with Grimes, and open sourcing her voice, and then having my own kind of creative boutique studio to help direct and create ideas like these toys I make.
Hello, I'm Birkelou. I am an artist and physicist, and I work on questions about how we produce knowledge and facts through sciences, but also through other systems. And I specialized in my bachelor, I specialized in complex systems, so I have a relation towards artificial intelligence and system theory from my studies. And I work with different technologies, mixed reality and artificial intelligence in my artwork. Yeah.
I'm Joost. I'm the founder of Thunderboom Records, which is a Dutch non-profit innovation lab, and we are founded to help artists explore the potential of new technology and develop our own technology in a responsible way to make sure that that it's inclusive, that it's transparent, that it's complementary. And our biggest project is called Open Culture Tech, which is funded by the Dutch government, where we develop our own toolbox with open source AI, augmented reality, and avatar tools to make these technologies more accessible and available to up-and-coming artists who don't have the budgets that the bigger artists in the world do have, like the Gorillas or like Grimes. So we like to make sure that everybody could do the same things these artists do. And yeah, we do that by collaborating with designers, programmers, and musicians.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm Ariel. I'm product director at a wellness soundscape company called Endel. I've actually worked in artist and label partnerships for 15 years in multiple tech companies, such as Ingrooves, a distribution company, Spotify as well for 3 years, also running artist and label partnerships. Had a small stint at Native Instruments as a product manager, but eventually landed at Endel, where I'm in charge of overseeing all the collaborations with artists and labels, such as the latest James Blake release that was out on Monday, which was a reimagination of Playing Robots into Heaven into a chill-out soundscape. So, yeah.
Thank you. So what I find fascinating about this is that on the stage, we have a tremendous amount of knowledge, and we have it from an artistic perspective, we have it from industry perspective, we also have traditional music industry perspective. I actually came from recorded music. My career path began with a company called Domino Records, and through this I've done instrument development for Native Instruments, I've worked for AI companies, emotional AI analysis, and I always found that there's huge disconnects between the industry and as it was and also where it's going. And with legislation, we talk about, okay, this legislative piece, this is a great thing that we can do one day. Legislation takes ages, and I think that from my perspective, which I shared with the panelists earlier, with Association for Electronic Music, we look at things from community. And I think with AI and the challenges and opportunities it presents, it's reliant upon us as a community to police ourselves. So now that I've said that, what does it look like? And I think that the best first question I would like to ask about is something that the panelists something I picked up on probably about a year ago was static versus non-static music. And Birka said she's working with generative, and she would like to define the semantics of that a little bit better. And
yeah, I think if we talk about static music, maybe not everybody, we should give a definition, or we should talk about what we mean by static music. In general, in talking about AI, I think it's so important. This is not even AI yet, but I think we should really get into the habit of being very precise with our language and really being aware of what we're talking about, because I am a bit disappointed often when I hear people discuss AI in the media, but also on panels, how much there is people creating a kind of a myth around AI for their own good, for their own advertisement, but not really educating people on, or educating the audience, or getting into a dialogue with the audience about what AI really is, what it's able to do, what it's not able to do. That's why, and probably also as a physicist, I'm very hung up on definitions to define things and talk about them so we know what we're talking about.
No, I think that's great. And also, like, the AI, it presents a threat, it presents an opportunity, it presents whatever, but some of the advances are happening can be so shocking for people. Like, you can consider our entire music industry has been based on static music, the way we track music, the way we listen to music. And then all of a sudden, we have someone like Ariel's on stage, whose company Endel has come out with a product that is non-static, evolving, adaptive music. That's a shocking thought if your business models as a collection society like GEMA or a company like Spotify is all of a sudden presented with this. And this is what I wanted to drill into, is the culture shock around AI and also how we as a community can react. But Endel did a deal with Universal. Talk about old school versus new school. How did that come together? Because I'm interested in finding where the coming together points are.
Yeah. I mean, I think AI was a hot topic that a lot of labels and artists wanted to participate in a way that was viable for them, right? That did not implement any stealing of materials and had a good collaboration in place. And when we're talking about different types of music, for Endel, what they have focused on are wellness soundscapes, which you could also call functional music. And functional music has been evolving over the last 10 years thanks to the birth of long-form video on YouTube, where people started uploading sounds that could help you sleep or focus or relax. And what Endel has done, it has taken this kind of component of having the necessity of sound to improve your life, and essentially had a wonderful bunch of composers, engineers, and very smart individuals come together to work with scientists and build functional music that was backed by neuroscience, essentially. And all of this was integrated inside the app, so you can download the app. And sorry, I'm not trying to do a sales pitch, but it does make sense to explain why the labels would want to work with us. But essentially, in the app, you can simply log into it and then select the function that you want to implement your focus or sleeping habits and whatnot. And the technology that they built around this allows them to use the sounds that they composed and create this generative AI that implements the science, right? But this technology also allows you to take stems from any artist and essentially curate the stems in a fashion that the AI can mold it to make it become a focused soundscape or a sleeping soundscape. And based on this, with the possibility to take stems from any artist, we were able to communicate with labels and say, hey, we're not trying to steal your material, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel, we're just trying to give you an opportunity to contribute to the functional music space, which accounts for approximately 10 billion streams a month across all DSPs these days. And none of it is actually artist-driven. Well, very few. Some artists are very driven by functional music, but most of them don't really participate in this dynamic, and nor do labels. So this was really an impactful opportunity to have a collaboration to participate in that space and give artists more of a lifeline for their catalog, give DSPs user retention because the scientific quality is there for this functional music, and of course create the revenue for labels that they are also looking to engage with. Yeah. So there was a lot of opportunity to use adaptive generative AI to help facilitate more communication with audiences, more experiences with fans, but also provide good business interactions for all parties involved.
That's cool, but the underlying thing that I'm hearing, besides the elegance of the product, is more artist, and basically you as a company decided not to rip people off. It was your goal to make sure these artists were compensated. So basically part of your internal ethics, as it were, your product roadmap included that compensation piece. And I guess Universal were happy about that too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, I can't really talk about the deals so forthrightly, but as the music that we create in collaboration with the artists and labels is actually distributed by the labels. So they own the rights to the piece of content that we delivered to them, and then they put it through their distribution channels. So actually, the ownership is on them, not on us. So we're just giving materials for them to explore and enjoy with their audiences.
Exactly. Thanks. Now,
I want to add to the definition of like static and then like dynamic music, right? Like with generating with AI tools and what we have now, it's like I see it as like content online where it's like there's VOD, like video on demand, and then there's like live streaming, right? And live streaming has this issue where it's like, oh, if you're playing a song that's copyrighted, it can get taken down on Twitch or YouTube or anything. Like, it's all DMCA'd. And so, like, it's the same thing. It's like, are you ethically sourcing content, and are you actually transforming it? Are you remixing it? That's like the artist side. Some people just play like albums and then they don't transform the content at all. And so that's one way to look at it. And then when she was talking, I was also thinking about like Google search versus like using ChatGPT, right? Like one of them is pretty static, and then the other one is a bit more dynamic using artificial intelligence. So could help define it if you look at different areas and fields of using it.
Absolutely, thanks for that. And I wanted to, Joost, because I know you've done a lot with working with artists and things like that, but I'm going to throw you a TuneCore thing, because that was in the mail. At ADE this year, Andrea from TuneCore, the CEO, did a panel, and I was on the panel with her, but she presented 4 sort of pillars of AI and ethics, which I just thought, as she said them, I thought, fuck, this is obvious. This is really smart. And what she said, that in their 4 principles for AI engagement to artists in the industry were consent, control, compensation, and transparency. Can I throw that to you, Joost? I know it's a big one.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, from this one, I think it is. It's interesting because they do sound easy and or simple, but like the application of these principles are sometimes very. There's a lot of paradox in them because, for example, to have a company where you invest a lot of money in to develop an algorithm, you can see with especially big tech companies, they do have a benefit of not being transparent because that's their benefit in the market. Product roadmap versus exactly the law. And the scarcity is, of course, what drives the price. So for an AI company to be fully transparent, although they sometimes claim it, I think now Facebook says they had an open source AI tool. Google claims they are sort of open source, but then, and I think that is very important to know what's happening behind the back door. How is this technology trained? What data is used to train it? What decisions do the models make? And is my music in there? But even without my music, how is the end result created? And it sounds very easy to be transparent, but I think there's something which I find very interesting, and that's why we actually don't work with big artists and big tech companies, because we just realize there is a sort of a reality that I think they can't be like completely transparent, because that would say, yeah, how say that over. That's beyond the point for them. Like I don't know the exact English word for that, but you cannot be like fully transparent, because then you can be copied. And for us, it is the interesting thing: can we give these tools made by big companies mainly, or like these models behind it, to artists and give them the means to develop their own technology, so you can do it yourself and be in full control? Because I think the control and the consent and the transparency is not always. You cannot always marry these 3. Exactly. And also, I always think that it's like sort of uses and abuses of AI. It's not a binary thing of good and bad. It's kind of more good, cheeky, and bad, perhaps. And that sometimes, like, I think artists do have an impulse to be a bit cheeky sometimes. Companies have an impulse to be a bit cheeky. And that's where we have to sort of govern ourselves in a way. Yeah, especially with AI, which I find one of the most important things is the inclusivity and the representation of the data in the end. Like talking about ethics, I think one of the most important things is what's the data you use to train or use as examples for an algorithm. And when you can't check the algorithm and you don't know what it's used, what data is used, what images are used, what kind of reference texts are used, what's the reference music that's used. And for example, looking at the Music LM first prototype by Google, and they opened up a little bit of their data set. I think it was 5,000 text to music pairs out of 50,000, I think. And then if you check it, I think it was the word male occurred 3 more times than the word female. And the word rock occurred like 1,000 more times than the word R&B. So you know that in the end, the output will be biased. And it is impossible to make an unbiased system. But there, I think it is very important to be transparent, to make sure that if you are an R&B, like a female R&B singer, and you use this technology, that you know that you're underrepresented in the tools, and at least be transparent about it. And I think that's not a very sexy story to tell, like that this is the case. But the same goes for ChatGPT, the same goes for Midjourney. Like it is very biased in the end. And I think it's very important to be really transparent about this going forward. Yeah, no, for sure. Birke, from an artistic perspective, I think AI has become, unfortunately, like the NFT of 2022-23. You know, it's the buzzword that fortunately has a lot more depth to it in a way. But
you know, as the topic came up, like, I mean, AI has been leveraged in production tools for studio production for years, absolute years. And I mean, do you, for the sake of the audience, some examples of companies that have been using, are there tools that you're using for years that incorporate AI? Like, do you use Isotope, for instance, or?
I don't.
Cool, okay.
No,
well,
because so maybe one more thing, because I actually just wanted to chip in on what Jules just said,
That's
and
good.
then I will come back to that. Because I think also from an artistic perspective, there's another kind of transparency that we as artists can provide that I think is really useful, in that we communicate to our audience how we use the tools and in which way, and which part of our music is influenced by artificial intelligence or produced by artificial intelligence, and which is not. Because I think it's a very, from a societal point of view, it's a very valuable role that artists can take in educating the broader audience on the technology, because a lot of artists have better access, I mean, especially bigger artists or artists who are really focused on technological topics, they have more access to these technologies. They have time to invest into researching these technologies, using them, applying them. And I think that it's important to to communicate very clearly how we use these tools and what they're able to do and what they're not able to do. Because what I see again and again in the broader public, also on events, on AI, is that people are very confused, very scared of AI. And I think it's important to be very clear about what AI is able to do and what it's not able to do, in order to diffuse a bit of this panic that some people have about being left behind, losing their jobs, but also a lot of other things. And I think artists there have a role and very easy possibility to be part of this educational but also empowering process, actually, to their audience.
I think that's a better thread than my question a few moments ago. So I'm going to stick with that for a second, and I'm going to drag you in. But artists, particularly in electronic music, so electronic music is the perspective that I look at the world from the Association for Electronic Music, so it's in the name. But electronic artists are constantly adopting, I mean, it's like ground zero for new tech, new formats, new, you know, and this eventually has an impact through the wider industry and touches upon other genres. But I think that, like you said, it begins with the artist. And Koto, I mean, you've been involved in some amazing tools to help artists understand the industry, not to mention Grimes' AI tool. Like, what disconnects have you seen through what I would call the traditional music industry and the sort of knowledge sharing and tools that you have brought into the world and to artists? I hope I'm phrasing that correctly, but you know where I'm going.
Yeah, there's definitely huge disconnects, and so I feel it's perception and then community, right? And how you define community and how you even define education, two different communities of people. And so that's kind of what I end up seeing, and when I talk to people, and I talk to like a wide range of people, and a wide range of people like follow me, and a lot of them actually just hate AI. A lot of them just like really, even just mentioning it, they're just like please just don't talk about it, don't show me it, don't like play it for me. It's like the worst thing to them. And so,
that's what I'm trying to get at too.
Yeah.
Like, let's get beyond the hater thing and so keep talking. Sorry,
yeah,
I'm just.
and then like what I try to do is like just listen, and I'm like, wow, like I don't feel this way, but I want to hear and like understand. Especially a lot of them bring up these big issues like the ethics of it and like how it's not real art or how it's not real, like and it's just bad sometimes. And so I guess going back to what you're asking is like I see kind of the spectrum of like working with artists who want to push forward the innovation and the technology, and even working with people in the industry who like see the potential in it, to help people who never had these resources, never had these tools, and like even just spark something to be creative and create stuff. And that's kind of where I see like the disconnect. Is just people who are like just like very against it on that spectrum, and then people who are like, well, actually, like, yes, there are a lot of things we need to think about and talk about and figure out, but it is a Wild West situation where it's like, we're here now, it's going to continue happening because of big tech, and so we should try and incorporate it and talk to artists and talk to people who want to create and make things catered to them. That's what's really cool about Endel. It's like so ahead of the curve, and then like it's a really great product. I think people should just build really great products and
yeah. And not suck.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Thanks.
Yeah, one for Endel. But you've also done in your work too a lot of demystifying of the music industry process for artists. When I'm thinking about some of the tools that are available, so that the way I look at it again, sort of with my electronic music goggles on, it's like, and these tools that are coming in formats or whatever, it's just pushing it. The wider industry is, of course, they don't want to talk about it. There's hater, but it is really right now what I'm seeing. I mean, I've been working in music for too long. I'm an old dude and 25 years now, but I'm actually seeing a point where shit's getting real. Like business models are under threat, and there's this creative push from actually artists and also some very responsible tech companies who at their heart want to do right. But I think backstage there was one moment where we talked about what are some practices that artists should be careful of, or without naming names of companies or naming names of companies. When it comes to your data, what knowledge can we share in terms of what's a bad look in terms of like training data? Yeah, you're good at
Yeah, I think that for our Open Culture Tech project, we are looking at what's out there, what's popular, and how can we create an alternative. And from our like practice and talks with artists, there are a lot of really interesting, for example, generative AI tools where you can use to like create melodies. But then if you dive into the terms of conditions, for example, they say the content you create is you own them, or you own the music. If you read, if you go to the bottom, you see there's also a sub-license that makes it open source or now Creative Commons, or that the company or the tool is also sub-licensing your music. So, like at first, if you scroll, it looks like, oh, I own the music I make. But then, if you go further, you see that actually also the company that provides you the tools also own your music. So I think that is very important when you use these tools to always check the terms of conditions. And the same goes for the voice clone tools. And a lot of them they own the input data, which is literally your voice. And I think there are, so not naming any companies, but there are a lot of generative AI tools and voice clone tools, which if I was an artist would really be really careful with using them and check the terms of conditions. And that's what we've been trying with Open Culture Tech. Is also developing this, because a lot of this technology that's used by these companies is actually open source research from universities, from researchers who came up with the original model. And not the only thing, but the big part that these companies do is create an interface and a marketing plan, and then make sure this is a really good product. But the core technology, 9 out of 10 times, is open source. So I think for a lot of artists, and it's really important to know that if you're interested in this, you can go one level below the service of these tools and see what you can do with the technology yourself, because this means you are in control, which I think is one of the 4 pillars which I agree with. Or check me, and there are good companies as well. So there are companies who really have good terms and conditions. I think this is really, really important for artists to know what you're getting into.
I think the terms and conditions thing is the most boring part, but it's also that's kind of the piece with tech companies, is that when you come to the product and there's an offering, it could be a distribution, it could be a creative tool, it could be, but what's written in the terms and conditions is ultimately stating what they can do with it. And I think that we have to be aware, in terms of creative sense, that artist metadata can be used for training without their consent or knowledge, or they consented in the terms and conditions. And again, that's sort of good practices versus a bit shady, if I can judge it.
I want to jump in too, is just like the contracts artists sign to labels are also very shady. Like,
yeah, you demystified a lot of that. And
Yeah.
with Elf-Tech, yeah.
So it's like we're facing similar issues in different formats, and on a wider scale. And then I think I just want to toss to everybody as well. It's like I feel like the biggest disconnect is a lot of times through engineers and artists and just generally people who are seeing the space and not even understanding like how much engineering is actually going into building these things, and how it's the same as the creative process. It's not easy to actually, like, yes, you can text audio and do all this stuff on the surface level with products, but to actually engineer that is like insane.
It's a lift. Yeah, exactly. So that's one for the engineers and the tech roadmap and that.
It's a dance, right? Like,
but that's it. It's a dance, and the dance has to go well by parties sort of vibing with each other in a positive way. That's all I can say right now. My thoughts.
And going back to the generative music, also we've been doing like. In the coming years, we do 10 shows with artists who had a case study or brought in a case study of, I'm a traditional musician and I want to work with new technology. I don't know anything about it. I'm also scared, but can you help us? And we selected 10 artists, and we have some tech companies who are like really good in developing AI, AR. And one of them was a musician who is a bass player and sort of soundscape in the middle, like electronic. And she had like an EP of only 15 minutes. And she's like, how can I make this into something that's at least 30 minutes so I can tour with this? And she went like on all these tools. And then, if you go to the terms and conditions, it's in the end, we helped her create sort of a custom toolbox to see how can I make my 15-minute music into a workflow that is interesting live and sort of expands my music into 30 minutes. And maybe with some generative AI visuals, I can even make sort of a visual show because it's just me on stage. And I think their AI adds to the business model of this independent artist. And I mean, it's still pretty traditional. I mean, it's an artist on stage with a bass and a computer, which is, I mean, the computer is also not that revolutionary anymore. But I think the AI here really adds to her work without taking away a lot, without stealing her work, without taking too much control. And we're now looking into ways of making this into sort of a workflow that we can share to other artists. And I think this is like a unique case study that came from her sort of problem or question, and that we thought, well, this is something really, really nice that can help.
Ilka, as an artist, do you feel hopeful about two things? One, the creative process, I suppose you're optimistic about. How about getting paid?
So for me personally, as I'm also a programmer, it's okay. I go by. I also create my own tools, so I have something that's unique, and that's always good for getting paid.
So you've managed to, you've married the disciplines. That's, of course, programming with art as in music. Yeah,
but I'm thinking about the general sphere I'm working in. If I'm worried about people, I'm not worried about people not getting paid. I mean, I think we should really be pushing forward to make sure that material that is used for training is compensated for.
I agree.
That's something I think we should really somehow fix legally. In all areas. That goes for images, for voice, for music. It's complex, but we should really do that. I think that the younger generations are way more aware of the power of coding, that it's really a language that they learn to orientate themselves in the future world, much more than the past generations. And I think it's a very helpful language, and artists who learn to code will have way more options, tools, possibilities in the future, more and more and more. And it's really not hard. I think everybody can learn to code. It's like, it sounds sometimes like a complicated thing, but it's really not hard. So I think that's something that's really worth picking up. And then I think it's about creativity. I really don't think these tools steal anybody's job. I think what's often said and what's true is that somebody, like a musician, using AI will probably be better in the long run or have more options than a musician not using AI, and that goes for each profession, wherever you work at. So, I mean, staying up to date, keep learning, and being open and interested in new inventions is always helpful for being paid, for developing, for, you know. So I think this also, and especially goes for AI, because it's not very, that's the problem about AI, it's not very intuitive. People talk about artificial intelligence as if it was a person in a computer doing what humans do. And I think a lot of people maybe think that this is, I mean, who has the time to really research about artificial intelligence in their daily lives, you know, and learn about it and get into the depths of it? So I think the image that is created for a lot of people in their minds is the image of one algorithm that is human-like and that is growing in all computers in the world, you know, that is getting more powerful. And it's like this almost mystical creature or godlike creature because we don't really understand it. And that's not what AI is. AI is a field of various disciplines, research fields, and it is, the field of AI is trying to simulate abilities that humans have, like seeing, understanding, hearing, writing, producing music. And it's trying to reproduce these abilities, these human abilities, but it's a range of fields, a range of research fields, a range of technologies now that are developing. And each of these technologies, each of these research fields are very specific to solve single problems. And in this, they are very good. Like ChatGPT is very good at writing texts, but that's it. It's very narrow and very focused. And yeah, I derailed. Where did we start?
No, it was great. Coach, anything you want to add to that as a tech alchemist?
Nothing immediately.
That's fine. I think, though, that what I heard from that, too, is that the fear is a blindness in a way.
Yeah.
And although this is definitely difficult conversations, you know, again, we're talking about the creative process, protecting business models of a traditional industry. Like, Ariel, did you think when you started your journey, because you know, remember In Grooves and coming up, could you have imagined?
Not really, but I mean, I don't know, this makes me reflect a lot on how afraid the music industry in general is of technology. Like, I remember the times when vinyl switched to CD and then to, you know, mini disc, and then we had iTunes and new ways of consuming music. And I think the same thing happened with music production. It's not something that I'm very well versed in, but we had a drummer and a drum kit, and then all of a sudden we had a Roland 909. You know what I mean? Or probably some technology types that were less advanced than that. And there was always a fear that it would remove something or you would not have control over something. But I think it's just fundamental lack of understanding, because the people who actually managed to evolve with the technology actually created new business models, or they created new musical genres, new communities. So there is a lot of similarity with what I'm perceiving with AI, which is basically just fear, lack of control. And Lord knows, music people love control over their rights.
Absolutely.
So, and I think it's a very scary moment, just like in the way when downloads were turning into streaming, like labels were refusing to put their music on Spotify. They were so afraid that it would actually remove financial ability to lose downloads. And yeah, there was a shuffle period, but in the end, their catalogs were now worth much more than if we had just stayed under downloads or records. So I feel like the same applies to utilizing technology for music making or developing your business. The more open you are and the more of a collaborative conversation you can have with it, and the more you're willing to learn, like your artist did, for example. She was like, I have a problem to solve, well, why don't I use technology? I think there's a certain fruition in that openness that can certainly help us evolve together as a business, but also evolve our creativity in ways that are more wholesome. So yeah, I think those are my thoughts. But yeah, we definitely need people at the top of the music industry to also reflect on these things in a positive manner rather than trying to set lots of blockers, let's put it in that way. But I can understand why, though. If you have Google using people's songs and materials to try and develop their own technology, you'd want to have a piece of that.
Was it in the TNCs when they uploaded onto Google Play back in the day? Like, could they train on it? I mean, these are questions, that stuff being there.
This is interesting. It's like same kind of things I was thinking is like when he said like computers aren't that revolutionary, it's like here we are saying computers aren't that revolutionary, like, and now we're at the point where it's like at some point people are like, oh, AI is not even that revolutionary. Like, you remember when that was like people were scared of that? Exactly. It's like we're at that point where like, and that's going to be the future. Like, I'm very confident in that. And so even with electronic music, it's like when people were switching from piano, which is like a technology, right? And people don't even view it as that. It's like going to synths and stuff. Everyone was like, what's going on? Or this is like the common debate topic. It's like, oh, when like cameras were invented and then like what happened to the people who were like painting and stuff. And it's like, I think that's a really strong kind of argument for the technology. And I emphasize technology specifically because that's like what's happening. Yeah, it's a tool.
Also, too, like, I think it's important not to think of, when you look at the world in this way that you know it or learned it in the genres that exist. I mean, somebody asked me about, what will generative AI affect in terms of certain genres? And I was like, well, if artists utilize it, there'll be new genres invented. Because that's like when you talked about the 909 or the 808. It's like, yeah, it sucked for drummers at that point, but look what happened. And I don't know. I mean, we can talk about this, but the feeling about getting through this is just about, sort of find your community, find your tribe, find people you trust, work with them, learn.
And I think in that sense, accessibility is one of the most important things, that everybody has the same opportunity to work with these tools, and not just some programmers or some artists who have the means to work with really like cutting edge technology. Same goes for avatars, or like what we call the metaverse during COVID, or like concerts in gaming. I think like a lot of these new technologies, I think only work or would only add something to like music culture as a whole, when a lot of people have the means to experiment with it. And because I can imagine that if there's only a few people who really understand this new technology and take advantage of it for their own good, I think that doesn't really add to a healthy industry. So I think leveling the playing field, educating people indeed on how training works, and although you don't have to read all the terms of condition, Command F and just check the word content, or like own the word. Let's just search the word own, and it takes 1 minute. So I think that's really important, like these panels and like conservatories or design schools, like people who are the music industry of the future, or design education, or music business education, like see how this would add to the industry as a whole and make it accessible is, I think, the most important.
Yeah, no, also too, I'm realizing in some ways too, you know, sitting here in Berlin, Germany, where the music industry, we look at the industry through certain cultural perspectives. Like I can remember, like when Grimes's Tool was released and Dauda was announced. I looked at Dauda and I was like, Hatsune Miku, and he's like, exactly. And it's like if you look at it from this perspective of like, you know, this horror of, you know, being able to use someone's voice to create, you know, music that they're not in control of. Now, I do believe in moral rights. I don't think somebody should go out and write a fascist anthem with Holly Herndon's voice, for instance. But there are precedents in other cultures, like around Hatsune Miku in Japan and Asia, where that was open source. You can do what you want with, and this just empowered a massive, massive pop star.
And a genre, like you were saying.
Yeah, and a genre. So that's what, I mean, Birke, do you find, is that sort of, is technology alluring to you also just, does it speak to you as a soul of an artist in terms of just this kind of great unknown, or why did you choose to go in that direction rather than just play guitar, for instance, or something? You probably play guitar as well, so.
Wow, that's a very personal question. I mean, that's
okay.
very just for me, yeah, of course. But I was always very interested in sciences and how we produce evidences and facts. And from there, I was interested in the role of technology in producing evidences. And in how actually culture influences how we build technology in this whole area.
So technology is an extension of human expression and culture.
Yes, and it's kind of a medium for innovation, but also for knowledge between the world that we perceive and our culture and our history, actually. That's kind of all coming together in the technology. So that's kind of the area I came from, and then I came from physics, from programming. I came to I did my bachelor in physics, but then I did my master in digital media art at an art faculty, and did media informatics, media theory. So, but I came from programming, so I stayed with programming. And that was my language. And I liked it because I mean, it's obvious that's kind of the future, and I was very interested in talking about the future, being engaged with how we produce future. So that was how I came to using mainly technology. Oops. And then I discovered how many possibilities I had by programming my own tools, using microcontrollers, soldering microcontrollers, programming them. I did a lot of live coding, just writing code that in real time is translated into music. And I loved it and stayed with that.
Thanks for sharing that. I also think it's kind of a beautiful analogy in that there's this, you know, AI didn't drop out of thin air. Humans created it. There was an urge, an impulse. There's a desire to use it. We've learned as humans how to somewhat get along with each other despite some turbulent shit going on in the world. But for me, in my heart, that's the feeling of it. It's here, that's it, it'll evolve. And how do we, as a community or wider community, just be respectful of another and move forward? Any further thoughts anybody wants to share, or should we do some audience questions? Okay, we got 7 minutes late. Yeah, we've got one. There's a chap with a microphone who is gonna, or he's got, I could just give her mine. Sorry. Yeah. It's right here.
Thank you. My name is Roz, and I'm a membership manager at Ahern, and I'm also an artist. I'm very pro working with new tools and innovation, and I see AI as, like, the actual technology part can be quite neutral, but I think I also have a very healthy skepticism of tech companies and consent, as you mentioned, with terms and conditions. Just recently, an example, I was on Instagram, and they made me reconfirm my consent to use my whatever I upload for their advertising. And I was trying to skip it multiple times without pressing consent because I didn't want to give them my consent. But in the end, I was like, okay, what's my choice? To be part of this or not to be part of this? And so it makes me think, how much choice do I have to really opt out, especially when this is a future? And so that was one of my sort of considerations. My other consideration was, okay, so the people that are creating these sort of tools, do they have conversations about this now that we're in this sort of, in this era where people, like, I guess they ought to be a bit more skeptical about what these tools are. Yes, it's this, supposedly this free tool that artists can use to promote their work freely and circumvent things, but we're still in this sort of thing where now potentially they're using our data. And yes, I'm consenting theoretically, and because I feel like I don't really have a choice not to be on these sort of platforms. And I think to myself, okay, I'm going to upload my music onto like a DSP. In order to do that, am I going to have the option to opt out of being part of their training tool, or to be not part of this, that they can use my music or my data to do that? So I guess for me, I'd like to see a conversation where it's not polarized. I feel like it's quite a moderate type of perspective to take on anyway, that it's not the case that I'm afraid of technology or the possibilities and it being open, but I think it also presents an opportunity where we can really hone in on these pillars like consent and transparency.
And sort of, in other words, the predatory aspects of some of these sites in terms of what they're trying to get. Is that also a
well,
concern?
I think I've been on Instagram for like ages, and I've been, I'm on it, very naively at the beginning, just posting all my sort of stuff, and it's been on the news about what whether it's healthy for people to be on these sort of platforms and whatnot. And then just last week when I tried to get onto it, it asked me to reconfirm my consent for them to use my information for marketing, and I felt quite icky about it. I tried to skip it, and I couldn't. Yeah. And so I pressed OK. But now I know that because this is what, like, how much I have the option of deleting it and not participating. But is that a good position to put me in, if that makes sense? And I just wanted to know, with people that are creating these sort of tools, are they talking about like consent? Are they putting this at the forefront of their minds when it comes to this artist? Or are they really just thinking, cool, this is a tool? And you know what I mean? Like, I want to feel like the people that are creating these tools for artists are really putting this at the forefront of their minds when they're developing their strategies and their processes to be more like open when they talk about terms and conditions, not in this sort of small print where most artists or most people are just going to press OK, right? Like, So I just wanted to add my bit to it.
No, cool.
I totally agree. I think we've all been there where we were in front of a screen and we were like, I don't want to agree, but then I'm kind of excluding myself from something. I really know this feeling. I would come back to education. That's like, I'm always stressing education so much, but that's why I would like to see everybody get so much more educated in the field of AI and also programming, so that more people can create their own tools, or if they use tools, at least understand how their data they provide will be analyzed and used, so that maybe you have a better idea about what your data might be used for by a company. I do not think they have your consent or our consent at the forefront of their mind, not at all. And I agree that they should have on that, Yeah,
and I agree with how, I think what you started with was we as a community, or as the music community, should at first, like, it's us, it's our responsibility how we work with these tools, or or to take a stand. But I think until a certain degree, you have certain tools or certain services who are at a certain scale that you can be an artist by not being on social media? I think there is can you at a certain point there is do you have to? I mean, there's always a choice, but do you? And I think there's a point where I think collectively there is a way to create legislation and create law. I think European Union is trying. It's the first step. I think as the only political body in the world, they are trying to do something. Last week I had to decide if I wanted to pay for Instagram or not. I think that's sort of a new rule. So there is something going on in the right direction, but I think this is something at a level that the community, the music industry itself as an industry, is too small even, I think.
Well, it goes from community now to governance, and that's why I'm a fan of government, because it moves in that direction, definitely. You had a question.
It's not a question. I just wanted to quickly respond to you that this is something that has come up for a matter because of how EU has been pushing and pressurizing them to stop tactically forcing their advertisement onto European users of their services. And now they're saying that if the European users of Facebook or Instagram don't want to see these ads, they must pay a fee so that they have an ad-free service. But also the terms that you're talking about trying to accept or not accept, they're usually long texts. And they know that you don't have time to read them, so you'll consent to give away your rights. But we're talking about business. Everything is business. Data scientists, what is their job? If people are collecting your data, they're selling it to a certain company, to another service, third-party user, and that's how they make their money. And that's why you have this platform and think that it's all free. I'll upload my content. They have to monetize to make money. Mine was to give hope to the artists that are in this room, to the musicians, to the producers and makers of the content, that there's still hope. Everything, there's always a phase. We had a phase in 2021, and that was about NFTs. Last year was the metaverse. Everything was metaverse. This year is AI. Now, AI has been here for ages.
Exactly.
And we're still using it. But I think it's very important for the creators, for the musicians, for those that work in the business to understand the idea of the human value. When you create content that is really great, when you create music that is really great, how you disseminate that content is very important. Now, the people that work for DSPs are always talking about you need to upload your music on Deezer, on iTunes and Spotify and what have you. But as an audiophile, I'll tell you, if I sit in my living room and plug my vinyl through my amplifier, it sounds better. It sounds like an artist is giving me a live show right there. Same with the CD. Now, let no DSPs tell us that the CD business is dead and the vinyl is dead. That is the only way you can have a piece of an artist. By you streaming music, it sounds great from a hi-fi context, but it will never give you what you get on a vinyl or a CD or cassette. Now, I'm happy that all these mediums are coming back, and a lot of people are talking on them. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. And also, I'm a fan of cultural artifacts as well. So I think it hits that. Listen, we've gone over time, but thank everyone for being here, and my love to the panelists for diving in on this. It was fun.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.